There once was a monk who was said to have persevered for 30 years in a life of simplicity and prayer and study and service, and one day he said to himself, "I have now spent many years here, but have seen no great visions, nor performed any great miracles, as have other servants of God who have gone before me." He was frustrated and tempted to forsake the vows that he had taken toward his life of prayer and simplicity and service, and to return to the world, but he suddenly heard God speak. "What miracle do you want to perform that would be more extraordinary than the faithfulness and courage which your God has given you, that has allowed you to persevere all these years?" And the man continued on faithfully living out his vows before God. We look at rhythms of faithfulness this week, and any Christian thought on the matter of faithfulness has to begin with the God of the Bible himself, who sets the tone for what faithfulness is all about, because God is faithful. God is trustworthy, God is loyal, God is consistent, God is dependable, God is committed. God is on a long journey in the same direction with his people whom he loves. From the early pages of the Bible, God is a covenant-making, a promise-making God, who makes good on his words to his people because he is faithful. Psalm 36 says, "Your unfailing love, O Lord, is as vast as the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches beyond the clouds." Psalm 86 says, "You, O Lord, are a God of compassion and mercy, slow to get angry, filled with unfailing love and faithfulness." This pattern actually develops throughout the Old Testament, specifically in the Psalms, where we see God praised for his faithfulness hand in hand with his unfailing love. Watch for it as you read the Psalms, unfailing love and faithfulness. In Psalm 100, we hear, "The Lord is good, his unfailing love continues forever, and his faithfulness continues to each generation." And from generation to generation to generation, God's people have come face to face with evidence of God's trustworthiness, his dependability, his loving faithfulness. And they've told stories about it, and they've sung songs about it to their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren. Great is his faithfulness. That's not just hymn lyrics. Those words actually come from the Bible, specifically from the book of Lamentations. In an otherwise tremendously dreary poem about life in the school of hard knocks, in which the author describes how all peace in his life has been stripped away and he's suffering bitterly and he's being made to chew on gravel every day, the writer pens these words: "Yet I still dare to hope when I remember this. The faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercies never cease. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies are fresh each morning." Even amid these wretched circumstances, something about God's day-to-day fidelity provides deep hope. And again, maybe you noticed God's faithfulness and love paired together in those words from Lamentations 3. God says what he means, and he means what he says, and he sticks with his people, which actually reminds me of another fantastic story about faithfulness. This one is not about a monk, it's actually about an elephant and an egg. And because you guys are so special and you smell so great, I am going to post a video of my charming wife Liz reading the Dr. Seuss classic, Horton Hatches the Egg. It'll be down at the bottom of this post. You are not too old for some Dr. Seuss. It is my favorite Dr. Seuss story. The video has pictures and everything. It's a great illustration of God's faithfulness to his children. So check it out. God's faithfulness, which is so complete and so unconditional that we meet words like this in the New Testament. Paul says, "If we are unfaithful, he remains faithful, for he cannot deny who he is." That's from 2 Timothy. Now, even though our unfaithfulness might have no effect on the faithfulness of God to us, the invitation throughout Scripture is for God's children to live in an imitation of his kind of faithfulness. Jesus teaches his disciples about how they are to let their yes be yes, their no be no, to be sincere and faithful in their words meeting with their actions. We're called to endure hardships with faithfulness. like Paul's friends in Thessalonica, who he brags about and praises for their faithfulness amid suffering. Jesus tells his followers that if they are faithful in little things, they will be faithful in large ones. Consider Christ's famous parable of the talents, in which some servants are each given an enormous amount of money and told to take care of it while their master is away. Some of the servants took the money and invested it, multiplying it to one degree or another, and the master, upon returning, praised them as good and faithful servants. But the one servant who took the money and in fear buried it in the ground, this servant was unfaithful, and he had everything taken from him. So, some questions for reflection. Where do you desire to experience faithfulness in your own life? Where do you long for God's faithfulness to show up and make good in your day today? What would God's faithfulness to you look like? What would it feel like? And where do you long to grow into deeper faithfulness yourself, to live into a larger consistency or trustworthiness in managing what God has generously given you? Where do you desire for your yes to be a truer yes, or your no a truer no? Consider those questions around your desire for faithfulness now. Pause the video for a minute. Make any notes in your workbook that you need to make. As for resistance, well, maybe consistency, dependability, loyalty, fidelity are a struggle for you in some specific way these days. Perhaps you've noticed that you're given to calling for a change of course when forced with opposition or struggle. Maybe the length, the duration of the specific journey that God has you on is wearing you down, and you would love to abandon it for something else, something more of your own choosing. Maybe in a dark moment you've wanted to disbelieve any notion that God is actually faithfully walking along with you through all things, because it would feel like it would let you off the hook for purposefully walking with him. Where are you resistant to the experience of faithfulness? Where do you feel inclined to abandon holy commitments amid disillusion or frustration? Where are you finding it hard to stick with God or with other relationships? Where do you find yourself placing conditions on your own faithfulness? And how is fear preventing you from being a good and faithful servant with all the graces God has given you to steward? Again, jot down thoughts on those questions in your notebook. Give yourself some prayerful time, and don't forget to watch that Horton Hatches the Egg video down there. It's so good. May you experience the faithfulness of God and his new mercies today.